Well, and I also figured too the fans are so passionate, and Cleveland fans deserve so much better than they've gotten. But I assume that they flock to the newspaper, to the website to find out anything they can about the team. And when there is so much to be uncovered and explained and discussed, I assume the numbers are always good, no matter how bad the team may be.
Well, that's very true. And once again, there's always something that is bringing the Browns right into the center of the NFL universe. Right now, it's Shedeur Sanders, right? I mean, there is just so much content, so much debate, so much vitriol over Shedeur Sanders. So the Browns are coming off of a 3-14 season, but every time you turn on television, every time you turn on anything, NBC, ESPN, CBS, you name it, the Cleveland Browns are right there, front and center, and everyone's talking about Shedeur. So they have remained relevant even when they're not winning.
I want to go back to the draft and the moment when the Browns are on the clock at pick number 144. Shedeur is available. They've already drafted Dillon Gabriel. They already have Kenny Pickett and Joe Flacco on the roster, and Deshaun Watson. We'll talk about him too. What's your best understanding of why they did this and who ultimately made the call to add yet another quarterback to this ever expanding carousel?
Well, it reminded me a little bit of the Johnny Manziel year, where Johnny's dropping, and you don't think necessarily that that circus is coming to town. And then lo and behold, Johnny lands on your doorstep, and you know what that's going to mean for your coverage, for him, for the Browns over the next how many ever years. And it didn't disappoint, I can tell you that. I mean, I knew the minute that Johnny showed up on the Cleveland Browns doorstep that he was pretty much a train wreck. It was very obvious, and then it just kind of went on from there. But here we were on draft day or draft weekend, thinking there's no way the Cleveland Browns are drafting Shedeur Sanders. They had already determined Dillon was their guy. They really, really liked Dillon and still do. So here we are in the fifth round thinking, I started to think, and I turned to my two colleagues next to me and I said, they're going to draft Shedeur, aren't they? They are going to draft Shedeur. And it just had that feeling of, uh-oh, here we go again, because we knew the avalanche of coverage that was coming. We knew everything that was coming down and that would come along with this sort of the circus atmosphere once again. And it once again, it's lived up to its billing. It's been just that. So I would say I truly believe that Andrew does make these football decisions. I truly believe that Andrew decided in the fifth round it was too much value to pass up there a developmental quarterback that they could take a look at and just kind of see what they had. And if it didn't work out, then you move on from it. But why not give it a shot?
And that speaks to one of the big criticisms I have of the Browns. There is such a focus on value, analytics, viewing players as assets and what we can do with those assets. I almost feel like they lose sight of the reality that you're bringing a human being to town who has a certain type of baggage through no fault of his own, although he leans into the celebrity, he leans into the social media stuff. I mean, he likes that. He's got a gregarious personality. What is that going to do to my team? What is that going to do to my quarterback room? What is that going to do to Dillon Gabriel, who is supposed to be the quarterback everyone's talking about locally as the potential future of the Cleveland Browns when in comes Shedeur Sanders? I feel like they never factor the human dynamics into these analytical decisions that they make. Is that an accurate assessment?
Well, I think that this is a football team that really tries to kind of block out some of that noise or tell themselves that they can handle it, that they can handle the storm that's going to come with a player like Shedeur. Because when they got to know Shedeur during the pre-draft process, they really liked him a lot as a human being. And I did too. I was out at the showcase in Colorado. I watched him move around Radio Row at the Super Bowl. And I really, really tried to figure out what kind of young man this was. I remember watching him on the red carpet at the NFL Honors Show, just everything. I took it all in. And I really ended up liking him as a person as well, and I still do. As you mentioned, he's very gregarious. He's funny. He's fun to be around. He lightens the mood. And I think they really looked at it and thought, he's going to be fine here. So it really hasn't been him. as much as it has been everything around him and what it brings. And a lot of it is social media and regular media, but it's really not Shedeur putting himself in the eye of the storm. It's more so just all of the ancillary stuff around him. And I think the Browns really felt that they could handle Shedeur the person, and they have. I mean, he gets along great with all of the other quarterbacks. Joe Flacco, I always see those two guys laughing together and having a great time together. I just don't think inside the building it's been anywhere near what it's been outside.
And obviously, 40-year-old Joe Flacco will begin the season as the starter. As one of our viewers put it, he went from comeback player of the year to don't come back player of the year, and now he is back. How long do you think he's going to be the starter? He was asked, I know, a week or so ago, whether it's a full season thing. He seems to get it. Is this just a matter of once they believe that it's essentially done, we got to see what Dillon Gabriel can do and or Shedeur Sanders?
Yes, I do think that at some point this season, you will see Dillon and you will see Shedeur. They need to know what they have going into the draft next year when they have those 2 first-round picks. So Joe will take it to a certain point, and if they're not winning, if they're not in the hunt anymore, then I think you'll see them turn it over to Dillon first, of course. And I don't know how long that's going to be. I think Joe has to go out there and hang on to this job. I think he has to show that he can, stay there in the pocket and not throw interceptions and, not fumble the ball. In his last 4 starts in Indianapolis, he turned the ball over, I think it was 6, 7, 8 times. It was a lot of times. It might have been even 9 times. So that's something that they're not going to tolerate here. And it's one thing that I think that they believe that Dillon Gabriel will do well, and that is manage the game, not throw the interceptions. But no one really knows until you get these rookies out there. But I think Joe will take it to a certain point, and then they'll turn it over to the rookies.
By all indications, they really love Dillon Gabriel. And I know he's a little on the shorter side, but he's been productive. He's got a lot of starts. That's one of the new things that we look for in college quarterbacks. The more you've played, the more experience you have, maybe the less of a learning curve and an adjustment you have. But what have you seen from Dillon Gabriel? Is it justified to believe that maybe he's got something that could cause him to be the starter for years to come?
Yes, absolutely. Each one of the quarterbacks in the 4-way competition sort of had their own little superpower in the competition. And for Dillon Gabriel, his superpower is the processing speed, his computer-like brain, the way that he makes decisions. And when we first asked Tommy Rees, the Browns offensive coordinator, what is the most important trait in his mind for a quarterback, he said decision-making. And I'll tell you what, you can see it in Dillon Gabriel. You can look at that 2-minute drive against the Rams just this past weekend in their final preseason game, and you can just see that computer working. And so I do think that he's someone that will get out there sooner than later, be able to see that. But he has a little bit of everything else too, or at least a lot of everything else. He's not extraordinary at anything else necessarily, but he's very, very good at all of the other things.
There's another quarterback who's technically not on the roster now. He's on the reserve, physically unable to perform list. He's still under contract and presumably will be into next year. Deshaun Watson. Some of your reporting back in the offseason program early on caught my attention because I got the impression this guy's going to be healthy at some point this year. He's going to show up and say, I'm good to go. Deal with me. And I get the impression the Browns would very much like to keep him on the physically unable to perform list all year long and not deal with him. Do you sense that that's coming where Deshaun Watson at some point between now and week 17 is going to say, I'm healthy, I'm fine, let's go, put me on the roster?
Well, I certainly think that Deshaun is going to say that. I do think that he is going to say that. And I think he's trying to show that now through his videos that he's putting out there. His private quarterbacks coach, Quincy Avery, put one out yesterday showing Deshaun going through elaborate footwork, dropping back, throwing the ball. The arm looks good. The footwork looks good. If you watch that, you do not think that he is coming off his re-torn Achilles surgery. It just doesn't look like that. So I do think that Deshaun is going to get to the point where he says, hey, I'm ready to go. And then the Browns are going to have to make some kind of a decision. Do they activate him off PUP? Do they not? Does he stay on there for the rest of the season? Now, I will say this, the messaging coming out of Berea has been very, very positive about Deshaun Watson on the part of Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry. They're talking him up. And so there has been a shift in the narrative just in terms of how they feel about him. We've gone from a swing and a miss from Jimmy Haslam in March to now these guys raving about Deshaun Watson, how hard he's working, how much he's mentoring these young guys in Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders. So anything can happen in this situation.
I don't want to be a cynic, but, I kind of naturally am. Aren't they doing everything they can in the hopes that he won't push the issue? I've never been aware of something like this where the team is saying, no, you're not healthy. And the player's saying, yes, I am. Take me off the PUP list. Put me on the roster, because that's their only alternative at that point. If they cut him, they'll have a massive, an enormous 10-figure cap charge next year. They have to keep him on the team. But if he is healthy enough to no longer justify being on the physically unable to perform list, and he's pressing that issue, and I don't know, would he file a grievance? I don't know, but I just feel like this is going to end in Watson making the very strong argument, I need to be on the roster. You can't just stash me all season long on PUP. That's going to be one of those things. It's going to drive plenty of traffic to Cleveland.com if and when that ever reaches a full boil.
Yeah, but like I said before, their messaging about him, it's not, hey, just you stay over there. We don't want to even pretend like you're here. It's not like that at all. He is right in the thick of everything, and they are enjoying having him in that meeting room with the quarterbacks. He's giving his 2 cents. He's helping these guys, the young guys, learn the offense. He's mentoring them. There are times when he is actually out there, not practicing on the field, but he's interacting with these quarterbacks, and they are saying really, really good things about him. The other day, Jimmy Haslam, Andrew Berry, and Kevin Stefanski all watched one of these quarterback workouts. So they have an eye on what is going on with him. And while it would seem like there's a disconnect between the front office and Deshaun, it's not like that anymore. They appreciate that he has stayed here for his rehab and that he is interacting with all of these guys and doing whatever he can to just be a part of things. So I wouldn't rule anything out. I'm not saying that they will activate him this year. They're mum about that, but they are complimenting him like crazy.
I'm very glad we had you on for this reason. I wasn't aware of that, and it has me thinking of the various potential scenarios. And, look at it this way. It's not crazy to think that if and when Joe Flacco yields to Dillon Gabriel, let's say at the bye week. Week 10, I think, is the bye. First 6 games, murderer's row. Week 9 is the bye, I think. First 6 games, tough. Couple of games after that, then the bye. I mean, if Deshaun Watson's ready to go and they love what he's doing with the young quarterbacks, it's not crazy to think that Joe Flacco would be benched and cut at that point. Is that nuts to think?
Well, I don't know how this is going to go. I suppose at the trade deadline, if they're very comfortable with what they have and somebody needs a starting quarterback and offers them something for Joe, maybe something happens in that space. So I think that is also perhaps something to keep an eye on. But the thing to remember about Deshaun right now is he's not ready yet. Now on PUP, he has to miss at least the first 4 games. I've heard, not from the team, but from just outside sources, that he feels like he will be ready to go, or at least practice somewhere in late October, November. So you start to get to the point where you have to make a decision around then. Do you keep him on PUP for the rest of the season, or do you give him a chance to go back out there and maybe even be the number 2 quarterback behind Dillon Gabriel or the number 3 or whatever the case may be?
All right. I'm going to try something here. Since I ended up being accurate from late April about Kenny Pickett being traded eventually, that was my immediate take once they drafted Shedeur Sanders and were entering the offseason program with 2 rookie quarterbacks. I'm going to make this prediction. And if I'm wrong, please never mention it again. The way it's lining up, And the trade deadline is now the Tuesday after week 9 at the suggestion of the Browns a couple of years ago. It was the Browns' proposal that got it bumped back to where it is. Week 9's their bye. I could see Deshaun Watson back, Joe Flacco traded, all in a very tight window up to the Tuesday after week 9. I won't be surprised if that happens. Boom, we make the change. Dillon Gabriel's in. Deshaun Watson comes in to mentor these guys, and he's available if they need him. And Joe Flacco gets traded to a team that needs a quarterback who can come in and play right away. That's my prediction. I don't feel as good about that as I did about Kenny Pickett in April, but that's the stab I'm going to take, Mary Kay, and we'll see how it plays out. But it's a wrinkle that shouldn't be overlooked because Deshaun Watson's not going anywhere. I mean, I don't think folks realize the way they've done the restructurings of his contract and the way they've pushed the cap hits out, they've got to keep him around into next year.
Yeah, I think that that's probably going to be the case just because, as you mentioned before, it would cost them too much for him not to be around in terms of that salary and the prorations all dumping into next year or whatever. So I do see him probably being around. But once again, they are being very vague about how they feel about him ever playing for them again. I have asked that question of all of them. I've asked it of Jimmy Haslam. I've asked it of Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski. And all they ever say is, let's wait and see what happens when he gets healthy. But that's not a no, right? That's not a no. And they didn't put him on the shelf for the whole entire season. I think a lot of this will come down to how does Dillon Gabriel look when he has to get out there in a real NFL game? How do NFL defensive coordinators attack him and try to take away any of his strengths or his weaknesses? So I think that is going to be a key factor here is how does Dillon come along, and then would somebody come calling for Joe?